Today we are going to take Causticum. Causticum is a remedy for old, broken down constitutions, suffers from chronic diseases. It is very occasionally useful in acute diseases. Its complaints are slow, progressive, and accompanied by progressive decrease in muscle power and paralysis. Paralysis of esophagus, paralysis of throat, such as occurs after diphtheria, as in gelsemium. Paralysis of upper eyelids, paralysis of limbs, paralysis of lower limbs with great relaxation, lassitude, and lack of energy, weakness, and heaviness of body like gelsemium. There is quivering, jerking, twitching of muscles, and there is twitching in sleep. And the next most important symptom of causticum is contractures of muscles and tendons. Tendon become shortened, resulting in temporary or permanent contracture. Limb is drawn up. Tendon of the forearm contract and there is gradually increasing flexion. Sometimes the whole muscle contract and shortened and a hard ridge can be felt with hand. Closely related to this is rheumatic state of tendon and ligament about joints associated with swelling and pain and stiffness and shriveling of joint which tighten up and ankylosed, and patient is growing weaker and weaker and is full of anxiety, fear, melancholy, hopelessness, and as if something is going to happen. This paralytic state is associated with rheumatic diathesis, and patient cannot endure both heat and cold. They both aggravate his rheumatic conditions, nervous conditions, and himself. His pains are ameliorated by heat, but they are aggravated in dry weather. Great deformities of joints and rheumatism that affects both muscles and joints, aggravated by exposure to dry cold winds or by bathing in cold water. Facial paralysis after exposure to cold dry winds like aconite. A long drive or riding against cold wind, next day that side of the face will be paralyzed. And causticum is almost always a remedy to recover this condition. Pains in face are violent, tearing, stitching, neuralgic by exposure to cold, dry winds, and they accompany facial paralysis. Another kind of progressive trouble in causticum is progressive hysteria. There is hysterical cramping, and his nervous system is extremely sensitive to noise, touch, excitement, and he is started easily. Children starts easily. Convulsive conditions after fright. Women with tendency to hysteria will have hysteria after fright, and nervous girls that are more inclined to chorea will have jerking of single muscle, jerking of tongue, jerking of face, or localized chorea. Epilepsy of young people at puberty from fright, from being chilled, from taking bath in cold river, or from great changes in weather. Causticum has cured insanity, not acute mania with violent delirium, but a mental aberration of passive kind. It is found in old, broken down mental cases after anxiety, after fear, after vexation, and long lasting grief. He is unable to think and carry out his business. He is overwhelmed with fear, fear of death, or fear that something will happen to his family. Suppression of eruptions are apt to bring out mental symptoms like mental exhaustion, despair, hopelessness. Eruptions on the one side of head and face, extending to the whole head, crusty eruptions, crusty coverings, the whole occiput. When such eruptions are suppressed, chorea is apt to follow in children, and in adults there will be trembling, paralytic weakness, or mental state, or pain in nerves. Suppression of facial eruptions will bring facial paralysis, or healing an old ulcer with some lotion or ointment will have similar effects. Headache is associated with rheumatic and gouty conditions of scalp. Scalp contract and tighten up in places like contractures in other places. Blinding headache after paralysis. Torticollis, that is, head is drawn to one side by shortening of muscles of neck.